Hello, welcome to another episode of Cycling Radsport und Cyclisme. Today we have Xan Crees. She's an amazing rider. She's one of someone I'd love to call a friend. She's so inspirational to my daughter, who is going to be a fan of life for her, or a fan for life rather. We talk about how she's going to be racing gravel, how she even ended up racing gravel. We do talk a bit about Worlds, which by the time this is out have already happened. We also look back at the cyclocross Euros, and we look forward to her cyclocross season. So sit back, enjoy, and yeah, hope you like it.
Hi, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's a nice Monday morning. Obviously this recording will go out a little later than this. So for context, you've just come back from Belgium doing the European Gravel
Mm.
Championships. How
Yeah.
was it?
Well, at least, it was quite cool because I think in total across all the categories, and that's obviously elites and age groups, so it was like 1,600 riders. So it's
Wow.
an absolutely massive event. And like the course was amazing. We rode it on Friday because we went over on Friday, rode the course. I'm like, this is going to be a lot of fun because I think that course is actually parts of it are being used for World Championship gravel next year. So I think that's
Yeah.
going to be a really great race. The only problem was because they did it as a 1 day event. Obviously they started the elite men, then the elite women, but then like 5 minutes later started the age group men, which just caused pure carnage because they came. I think it was about 20 minutes into our race. The like 19 to 35 men came through us, and well, like they split the field. It became a race of who could sit on
Hmm.
wheels the longest. But also because they were so competitive in their race, when they came past, they didn't care, so they just took us off our bikes.
God.
So I ended up like lying in a ditch and then ended up puncturing, but I punctured my sidewall. Um, and because of that, I was like, I couldn't even get, like, I had a CO2 canister, couldn't get any air in it.
Hmm.
And you're only allowed to get support at the mechanic stations. And unfortunately, we'd literally passed the last mechanic station about a mile or like 2 kilometers ago. So I had to then get the rest of the way around the lap before I could have any assistance. So the race ended very quickly for me, but it was an absolutely great experience. And that course was so much fun that even though, like, obviously I ended up riding around further towards the back, like, it was still quite a good experience. Like, at least I was enjoying riding that course, even if I was like disappointed at the result.
Yeah. And even though like you might be disappointed on paper, it was like 46th, I want to say, out of
Yeah, it was like
59.
45th or 46. I can't remember. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but you're right close with Tessa Swanepoel, who you're usually with in cyclocross, so
Yeah.
on a similar level, but you had these extenuating circumstances that mean like you could have done much better.
Yeah,
And
I think that's the thing. It was like, because at the point, like, I was in what you'd call the front group, because I think if it was the women's and a women's race only, you could have seen quite an exciting bunch race that then might have split up, obviously, with like on the climbs, because on the long lap, it was quite a like long, like technical climb. And I think that could have split the field up. So I feel like the potential for like women's gravel racing is really exciting. I think it's just frustrating because I was like, oh, I'm doing really well. I'm in this front group. Like at the time, like Tiffany Cromwell was 2 wheels ahead of me, and I was like, oh, look, I've made it. And then it was like gone.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of wild that like because it's so mixed. I guess I mean we'll talk about it a bit more, but with Worlds, they have all the age groups the day before, so that's not a
Yes.
problem. I think they keep the fields a lot more separate, I guess,
Yeah,
than men's and women's.
I think they might put some of the age groups in, but they keep it the same gender because like it's very unlikely a 19 to 35 woman is going to catch the elite women.
Mm,
Whereas biologically, men are stronger. So if you put 19 to 35 men behind elite women, chances are they are going to catch them.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of, I guess
Yeah,
that must be frustrating that, it changes the dynamic because
it
then, as you
does.
said, like it's just who can hang on, get the toe and then keep
Yeah.
going, I guess.
But like, I do obviously appreciate from the organizer's perspective, like, there's only, for example, like it might be a case of, oh, they can only close the roads for a certain amount of time. So it's the best way of supposedly doing it. And I can understand why the organisers might want to start the elite women before the men, but in terms of a safety element and a racing element, you'd go actually maybe start the 19 to 35 men ahead of the elite women.
Mm.
But I think obviously it's a new discipline, so there's a lot of learning, and like people are still trying to work out what's best. So people are making mistakes. I think it's that feedback at this point that's crucial.
Yeah. And as you said, it's a very new discipline. What made you go into it?
Oh, so what was really funny is actually I wasn't really planning on doing much gravel this year at the beginning of the year. The plan was I was going to do mountain biking alongside road because I I wouldn't say I'd fallen out of riding on the road after being hit twice by a car in like quite a short time period.
Mm.
So I was finding off-road disciplines were helping me like keep in love with the bike and finding ways that I could still go for rides and enjoy it and not have that like panic or concern. So I was originally going to do mountain biking, but it was a lot harder to get hold of a mountain bike in the right size for me than a like cross or a gravel bike.
Mm.
So I think it was like maybe April time I made the decision that actually I could get a gravel bike tomorrow. I might be waiting for another 2 weeks or like 2 months for a mountain bike.
Yeah.
So it's like we'll do gravel then, like at least then I can do some off-road riding, like still enjoy the sport, etc. Then obviously I entered Gralock and it was like, oh, that went surprisingly well. I think it probably helps that like the last year I've done most of my training and riding off-road. So actually going for like long endurance rides on like a cross bike or a mountain bike was kind of what I was used to. So it was almost like what I trained for, like naturally, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, and what like a good accident that was, that it was like, oh, sorry, you can't get a mountain bike, but here's a cross bike.
Yeah. And you did Graloch, was it Grit and Grind in Sweden?
Sweden, yes. And we did
Where,
Gringer as well in Wales.
yeah. And you've had some really good results in like podiums, and UCI qualification has come from them
Yeah.
quite naturally. And then a couple of weekends ago, you became British champion, which I was like, wow, that's kind of
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Um, how was that? And like on the start line, were you thinking, oh, I've got a chance here, or was it just, what they call a puncher's chance, basically, you're in the race, so you've got a ticket kind of thing, but
Yeah.
that's as close as you feel you're gonna get.
I feel like initially when I entered it, I felt like I was going for like a podium. Like it was a case of, oh, it's my first year doing gravel. There's obviously some like really strong gravel rides, particularly in like Daniel Shrewsbury. So it was a case of, oh, we'll see what happens. But the Hope Supercross series started in the beginning of September this year.
Mm.
And me and like my team, or like, my team manager and me travelled up together, like to take all the bikes, etc. And we're literally on the way back from one of those races, and he was like, you know what, I think you could win gravel nationals. And it was like, oh yeah, because how the course is, it's actually really quite a nice course. It's obviously got like quite a lot of like gravel fire roads. It's got some a little bit more technical elements to it. It's like quite a fun course one for a little bit of everything. Like there's like the long straights, like the pure like power, or the gravel riders, more technical sections that suit those who've done mountain bike and cross.
Mm.
But in the finish, it's like quite a punchy climb, and then like a descent that's slightly sandy, and then it kind of descends into the finish loop with quite a few technical twists. And he was like, I think that end of that course will really suit you. And he was like, if I reckon if you come out of that like climb at the front, you'll win. And I was like, oh, so that's the point. It kind of put it into my brain that actually maybe I could win gravel national champs. So on the start line, it was kind of like I was a little bit nervous because obviously you always are when it's like suddenly it's like, oh, actually I'm going for a good result here.
Mm.
But like it didn't feel pressured. Like I don't think anyone was necessarily expecting me to win. Like it was a case of, oh, it could happen, but no one was like, oh, she's going to win. She's like race favorite, etc. So I think it did surprise a lot of people when I did come out of a jersey. In all fairness, and then halfway through the race, there was like this one point where I think I was just been on the wrong wheel and ended up towards the back of the group, and I was like, oh, this is hard. And at that point, I was like, maybe today's not the day. And then like I had my teammate Josie in the race, and she was just like, come on, keep eating, come on, you can do it. And I was like, okay. In all fairness, when we came into the final lap up that punchy climb, Josie did like a bit of an attack because she turned around to me in this race and was like, I'm not going to win this because it's too technical, but I reckon you could. And I was like, oh, okay. So even Josie's believing in me now. Bear in mind, in Sweden at gravel grit and grind, she absolutely crushed the rest of the
Yeah.
field. She put minutes into all of us. And I was like, oh, okay. So then she like drilled it up this climb, and then there was me, her, and Danny who got to the top of this climb. Kind of, it was all stringing out at this point. And at that point, I was like, oh, actually, I'm in the right place. This could happen again. And it was just a case of sat on Danny's wheel, coming into like down the technical descent through the twisty bits, and entered like the final, which is like the final 500 meters main arena on Danny's wheel. And there's 2 corners, and then it's a massive long straight to the finish. And I was like, okay, I'll just try and sprint it out. You know, once we get to that straight, I'll try and sprint, see what happens. But then one of the last corners, she just goes really wide. And my head was like, inside of the corner, which I think helps from having those transferable cross skills. Went around the inside of this corner, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got like 300 meters of a sprint to do now.
God.
So it became this world's longest sprint. But luckily, because of the cornering ability I have from cross, managed to get a okay gap. I'd say it was a fairly decent gap at the time, just by going around those 2 corners better. The funny thing was that so the finishing arch was a big black canyon like arch, but 100 meters before it, there's another big black arch, which is the like event village like barrier. So this is like, welcome to the event village. So I was sprinting because I could see like sprinting like head down, I could see a black arch. I was like, okay. And I think there's one video which you see me sit down because I basically got to that arch and then went, oh, I've still got another 100 meters to go. That's the wrong arch. And at this point,
Oh, no.
I was screaming. My legs were dying, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to hold on." Because at this point, at the like point when I was in front, it was like my race to lose. Basically, I was leading this race. It was like all I had to do is cross the line first, and I've done it. But it came down to a very, very tight photo finish, to the point Danny was carrying so much more speed than I was. So as we crossed the line, like I did this last minute, last ditch lunge, like, oh my God, I'm about to lose this, lunge the bike. I think somewhere there's a video, you can see how much I lunged, because like I'm then like right off the back of my bike, kind of do a little bit of a wobble. But in my head, I was like, because Danny was so much faster, I'd kind of assumed she'd won, but we're waiting. Like they basically said that it's going to be a photo finish. We're waiting to confirm the result.
God.
And then like I had like one of my team managers, Gina, I had Josie. They're like, you've done it, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't think I have. It was really, really close. I was just lying on the floor like dead, because that was such a long sprint. Like I'm very much not a sprinter. There's a reason I do cyclocross, not particularly like road, because I'm trying to work on my sprint, but it does not come naturally.
And also, like, you're not the tallest, so doing a lunge for the line is.
No. Yeah. But yeah, so I was just lying on the floor like collapsed, because like I'd given everything to this like last sprint, which is so much longer than I wanted. Just waiting for the result, and like finally like it gets announced that obviously I did win. And it was just so many emotions. It's like, oh my gosh, we've done it. Like just hugged everyone. There's so like about 10 photos of me hugging like everyone in my team, crying, because it was just like such an overwhelming feeling. Like it wasn't like I was sad, I was probably like really happy and really excited, but it was just so overwhelming that, oh my gosh, okay, I'm national champion. I'm going to get to wear national bands for an entire year now. And that was like quite a lot to process in that moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. Has it sunk in now, or are you still like a little bit in disbelief?
It's definitely sunk in. I think when I got to pick up my like customs team national kit, that was definitely another moment of like, okay, this is really mine. Like I'm now going to race in at Europeans, because it was quite a weird event. It was the European Championships, but it was also the Belgium National Championships, but it was also a UCI race.
Yeah,
so anyone could enter.
like.
Yeah, so anyone could enter, but you had to be European for European champs, and you had to be Belgian for Belgian champs. But like, for example, in the men's, the winner of that race is European champ and Belgium champ after winning one race.
Yeah.
But because it wasn't like European champs, say like in cross or road, where you're in like your national country kit, it was a case of you can wear your national country kit if you want, you can wear your trade team kit if you want, basically wear whatever you want in essence. So obviously like I raced in my like Team Spectre Cannondale kit, but like the national jersey version of it. And that was like another moment when I was lining up on the start line, like, okay, like for anyone who follows cycling, they'll be able to look at me and go, yeah, that's a national champ, which was like quite like okay. I think by that point it definitely sunk in.
Yeah.
But it does still feel quite crazy when I turn around. I'm like, okay, this is my like next year ahead of me. And then in terms of gravel, like I'm always gonna get to have national bands on my shoulder, like on my sleeves. That's the thing that gets to stay forever now, which
Mm.
is quite overwhelming.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Like for as long as you're racing, you just get to have those. Oh, do they call
Yeah,
them round jewels? I think. I
I
think
don't know. I
that's
just call
the
them bands.
official term, like the cuffs, obvious, like your
Yeah,
sleeves and your collar, you get the bands.
yeah,
And unless you become world or European, then you always have British.
yeah.
Which is
That's
wild
great.
because the only way that's ever changing is if you win more titles, which
Exactly that. That's ridiculous to think about that those bands will stay unless I win something bigger.
yeah. And yeah, I find as you said, it's kind of weird with the Euros being like kind of open entry as well, because the winner of the
Yeah.
women's was an Australian.
Yes.
So the winner of the Belgian Championships, which is also the Euros, was a
Yeah.
non
Brilliant.
yeah, a non-Euro Australian, and then second place was like Lorena, so she got
Yeah.
the Euros, and then
Yeah.
the best Belgian was probably 10th, I want to
It's
guess.
Martha True. And I
Yeah.
think she won the top 10. I think she might have been eighth, but don't hold me
Okay,
to
yeah.
that.
It's around there though, like it's like
Yeah.
sort of 10th back is like okay, well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild. And like looking at that start list as well, it was kind of this weird melting pot of like road riders and
Yes. A lot of
strong
cross
women.
riders.
Yeah, cross as well. Um, people you'll recognize on the circuit, I guess,
Mm.
especially for yourself.
Yes.
Um, and then, a few mountain bikers as well. And then I think there's like one or two that I would have gone, they're definitely a gravel rider. Because
Yeah.
otherwise
There
it's
weren't
just,
many that were pure gravel riders as such.
yeah, to be honest, I can't name many because it's so new. It's like there's not
Yeah.
that many pure specialists. There's
Yeah, and I
only
think
like,
other than like as in Europeans was televised and Worlds is televised, there aren't many events like gravel wise that you can follow yet or like
mm,
view. So in terms of public awareness, we're not as aware of those gravel riders just yet.
oh God, no, like trying to follow like Maddie doing the
Yeah.
sort of tracker 360 is like you just follow a GPS signal that may or may not be correct, and you're
Yeah,
like,
it's like last updated 3 hours ago.
yeah, well, cool.
Yay!
Well, there was a point Sunday morning when I checked that only three, like, is officially there's only three people that I guess had picked up their GPS tracker, um,
Oh,
because it was like you, Fem Van Empel, and Lorena.
yeah,
So like 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, you were officially leading,
yeah.
which is quite wild. I was like, quick, that'll do. Race over, done.
Totally. Yeah, like that could have been the result. That'd have been great.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, how are you feeling about Worlds then? Because that's in Italy, and
Yes.
I believe a bit more roady than gravel. Like
Yeah.
it seems that this Euros was very gravel. I think they said
Yeah.
like
So
80%, and they're going to do the course in reverse for next year's Worlds. They were saying that on commentary.
ooh,
Um,
that'd be interesting.
yeah, that's certainly what Rob Hatch and Ollie Beckinsale were
Yeah.
mentioning. Um,
But yeah, I feel like the course, it was quite funny. In the program, they were like the short lap is like 90% gravel, whereas the long lap is 55% gravel and 45% road. When you got onto that long lap, you were like, this is definitely more than 55% gravel. But yeah, I think I've heard that Worlds is something more closer to 50-50.
mm,
It's quite funny because in terms of like the UCI series, which obviously regulated by the UCI, most of the in the handbook and the regulations for that, it's like I think it has to be 60% gravel or something to be classed as a gravel
mm,
race.
yeah,
Whereas
I
I
mean,
feel Worlds won't be as interesting.
yeah, it's a weird one because like last year, commentary was saying that it was, I think it had to be minimum 40%, but it was kind of
Yeah.
like the bike path world championships more than the
Yes.
gravel. Um, Hopefully this year it's slightly more gravel, but I believe it's a similar organizational
Yeah.
team, so it's still, I think Filippo Pizzato is a part of it,
Oh.
the former road rider who was great on
Yeah.
cobble races, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah. It's definitely gonna be an interesting race, that's for sure. I think it looks like there's a lot more elevation in the course this year than last year, which I don't know if it all suits me or not, but I guess we'll find out when we get there.
Mm,
But definitely looking forward to it. I feel like obviously having the mechanical this weekend, like part of my brain is like, well, thank goodness it wasn't at nationals, and probably thank goodness it wasn't world, because obviously they're probably the two bigger events. But I feel like as well it's kind of fired me up to then go and do better next week after having like a mechanical write off a result this weekend.
Hmm. Yeah, because you've not been able to show your true ability or true potential.
Yeah, and I feel like as well when you are supposed to be like the national champion, you want to like represent the jersey well and do it like well. So
Hmm.
obviously having that weekend of obviously not being where I'd like to have been, it's kind of like then right, come on, I need to prove myself again. Now I need to show everyone why in theory like I'm national champion.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And it's kind of, I guess, is it a nice feeling that you're going from one type of national jersey to a different type of national jersey, your first time in the GB kit?
Yeah.
How have you got the kit through already, or do they?
Yes, mine has arrived, so that's always good news. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd be
It's
so
always like,
paranoid. Like, I'd expect it to like not show up, and then that be the way they're telling me
yeah.
subtly that I'm not selected anymore.
Well, they told us originally that they would arrive on, well, that it'd be shipped on the 29th of September. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the week before. Imagine there's any shipping delays. But
Yeah.
I think mine actually arrived on the 29th. It might have arrived before, actually.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, so mine arrived on the Thursday, so that was the 28th. So it actually arrived earlier than supposedly they were going to ship it, which is obviously a bonus because then like
Yeah.
I've had a whole week of knowing it's here, it's ready. I can obviously be fine to wear the GB kit. But yeah, I think there's always like something that's like in you, like it's like quite a nice feeling to actually be able to pull on like your national colours and like actually represent your country for a change.
Hmm.
Obviously, like there's always part of you it's like, oh, especially when you have quite nice trade kit, you're like, oh, it's a shame. And for example, for me, it's like I've just got this like national skin suit and now won't get to wear it until next year. But at the same time, like it's definitely quite nice to pulling on like a national and the GB kit.
Yeah. What are your hopes, ambitions for the Worlds? Obviously this is going to go out after the Worlds, so
Yeah.
people
In
listening and
retrospect,
watching along will be able to check the results and go, oh yes,
yeah.
this did happen.
I feel like it's hard to say at present because that's why we don't actually know a start list yet. So you could be like, oh, I want to be like top 25, and then like the top 20 or like top 50 is full of like World Tour pros, for example.
Hmm.
Um, obviously the main reason like part of me is doing it is like experience, obviously like getting that World Champs experience, and hopefully it'd be good to start building on for next year's gravel events and calendar. I feel like I would like to say like a top 25 would be amazing, but I'm aware we might have end up with a completely stacked field where it's like, okay, that might be less possible. But I think like if I was going to put like a result number, like that's where I'd want to be. But I just kind of, if there's a group, I'd kind of like to be trying to stay towards like the one of the front groups and just see how it goes from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And it's kind of, I guess, coming into this interview, I was thinking like you did, I think, really well at like Newark GP where you know, my daughter and I met up with you.
Yeah.
And I think she's gutted that she can't be part of this.
Oh, bless
She
her
really wants to
soul.
talk to you, but um,
Maybe
like,
another time.
yeah, exactly. Like, but I guess, yeah, you did really well there. You were in one of the leading groups at Lincoln. Can't remember because I know it split up quite early on, and there were sort of
Yeah.
two big groups, but I know you're doing really well there. And then obviously winning gravel nationals and getting good performances there. And even at the Supercross weekends,
Mm.
getting podiums there as well, and lovely UCI points, which I believe, if the race wasn't done last year, technically those are free points. If
You
you know,
points, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, like this feels like a very strong year, um, which is a very roundabout way of getting there. But
Yeah.
um, like, what's changed, or has anything changed? Is this just natural progression, or yeah, has something made a big difference that you can put your finger on?
Um, see, like I had this thought the other day because it was like when we were at Gravel Nationals, it was just like suddenly there's like so much more confidence surrounding like my ability on a bike. Because like there were times like especially like in cross, I'd always like put myself down. I'd be like, oh, I can't beat her, and I can't beat her, and I can't beat that. So I'd probably come fifth to 10th or something. And the last year, I don't know if it's like, I think a large part of it is obviously the support and belief from the team. For example, as I said, my team manager Josh and the band was like, "Yeah, you're going to win gravel nationals." And I think having somebody else believe in me that much, I was like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I can win gravel nationals. But then that's quite funny you say that, because I feel like part of me was slightly disappointed with my road season. I
Okay.
think actually, I think because the year before I'd had some like top, like, or getting really close to top 10s in national crits. I think I came like top 20 in national crit champs. And I was kind of like hoping to build on that. But I think because last year my cross season ended so late, I think I was still racing end of February in cross.
Mm.
It felt like it took a long time to build up like that road and like that sprint stuff. So it's by the time I got to like August, basically, I was like, okay, I'm ready to race now. Oh, all the races are done now. So I feel like there's part of that. So again, it like taught me myself, but I feel like that's why I'm probably like fresher this last part of the season, like those Hope Supercrosses and gravel like national champs. That was the point. I was like, right, I've built into the season now. Now I'm ready to race. So I really hit those races in a point where I was like, I feel strong on the bike. I kind of have confidence in myself and like probably like the environment I'm in with like my boyfriend and my team. Everything's like lining up really well at the moment. So I feel like that's probably part of it. Other than that, like I obviously feel like the same person. I'm still there and I still do everything that I used to do, I guess.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's like for me, I just think Newark the previous year, I don't know whether you
Yeah.
had a mechanical or something, but you were a lot further in your
A
drops
lot
and
further back the year before, in all fairness.
yeah, whereas this year, like every time I looked, you were kind of top 15, just sort of
Yeah.
surfing the wheels and not really. It certainly didn't look like you were struggling.
Yeah.
Whether you feel you were or not, I don't know, but certainly you looked comfortable.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think
I
like
think
one of the big things really is the women's field has got so much stronger in the last few years. And
mm,
like the number of women racing is continuously going up. So suddenly to get those top end results is getting harder because there's so many women that could all potentially be in that top 10, which I think is one of those reasons you have to take into consideration that my results aren't getting any better, but this field is getting so much stronger.
yeah, especially with like the Hansling team taking part
Yeah.
in a lot of the national crits. You're like, can
Yes.
you can you not? Like you're a Conti team. Like
Yeah, but
this
no,
is a
it's
domestic
good.
competition. But
Like,
no,
it is
like
good to see those riders there and also like to be able to see where you are, say, in comparison to having Conti riders.
yeah, I mean, every race I've been to this year, which admittedly is only two, but every time I've been to a race, Robin Clay's won. So
Yes.
if I go to any more races this year, bring some money and bet on her because that'll seem to do well.
I'll try that tactic in future.
Yeah, like I'm hoping to get to Derby for cyclocross.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know whether she does cyclocross, but if she
But
happens
if she
to
does,
turn
she's gonna
up,
win Derby now.
yeah, yep, you heard it here first. But speaking of cyclocross, what are your plans for the upcoming season? I believe we've discussed this kind of off interview, if you will, or off air, and like you're probably not going to do the Derby round of the National
Yes,
Trophy, even though it's your home round, because
I
you'll
know.
be somewhere much, I would argue, much better.
I don't know.
Partly
That common
because
climb is not my favourite.
you say that, but last year I think you were like 14th or so, and
Yeah,
just
I
behind
seem to
Pauline
be getting really
Ferrand-Prévot.
good
Like,
results on the Koppenberg, and I'm like, why? I always tell people that like this is such a horrible race and it's not my favorite. And then yeah, it's probably because I take so much pressure off it because I'm like, oh, not a fan of this one. Then it's like, oh, Bello, look, there you go.
yeah, well, I seem to recall you were like top 10 for a long time, and then
Yeah,
like, yeah, 14th just behind the kind of incredible
yeah, I think
rider that is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. Like,
yeah.
that's not bad. You know, I'd take that every day.
Yeah, no, it is a really good race, but I think it's so like climb is so demanding that every lap when you go up it, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And you really like normally in a cross race, like sometimes you just go, okay, how many laps have I got? Okay, I've only got to do everything 4 more times. When
Hmm.
it comes to the Koppenberg, you're like, oh dear, I've got to go up this climb 3 more times as well. Because you start at the bottom of it, however many laps you're doing that plus one extra time of the Koppenberg. So you've got that one
Oh, of
straight up the
course,
Koppenberg,
yeah.
and then and however many laps you're doing, you got to do the Koppenberg again.
Hmm. And yeah. I mean, I've seen many riders just be pushed across the finish. Like,
Yes.
yeah, that I've only ever done one race that felt like that, and that was National Hill Climb
That would make sense. Yeah, the problem
back
with
in
the
my
Koppenberg,
uni days. Like, yeah.
like a lot of the times at the Koppenberg, like if you're coming in with another rider, you have to sprint up that climb and trying to sprint up that climb. Because I came in like very similar time to Muddy Cousins. I think she was just ahead of me last year. We got to the bottom of the Koppenberg and we're like, oh, we have to sprint now. So we've just done the entire race. Bear in mind, it's normally quite muddy and quite challenging anyway. Now go sprint up the Koppenberg. It's just absolutely brutal. So you get to the top and you're like, there is nothing left. My entire body is dead.
I can well imagine.
Yes.
But aside from Koppenberg, what are your plans? I assume World Cups.
Yeah, so to be honest, nothing. I think because obviously we're still kind of in that gravel season, yet to fully finalize a cross calendar. So everything I'm saying, take with a pinch of salt because I could change my mind at some point and until
Yeah.
I've got my full calendar. But obviously the plan is we've got Gravel Worlds, which at this point in time of recording is next weekend. Then after that, I have the second round of the National Trophy, which I think is somewhere near Barnoldswick. It's near where one of the Supercross rounds was, but isn't the same
Okay.
place apparently. Like again, like we're currently considering whether it's worth going back to Clonmel for Ireland again. It's also like whether logistically we can do that because it's the same week as that round of the National Trophy. So trying to work out whether we can do both, or is that silly? Is that too much we're doing at this point in the season? But obviously for
I
like
guess.
all of our team riders now, it's like if we don't do Clonmel, we usually lose UCI points, but also we gain some by doing this National Trophy. So again, swings and roundabouts, like having to pick what you do. And then I think after that will be my first trip to Belgium for cross, where we're going to do a weekend of 3 races. I think this is before the World Cups and Europe start. So there's Ardoya, which is a midweek race. It's quite fun. Not televised, but it's just like still a good UCI race. And then I can remember what I think it's Overijzer, but it's a part of the Super Prestige. And then I think there's a race in the Netherlands as well, which might be part of one of the series, but I can't remember off the top of my head perfectly. But it's just a good like start of building that riding back into Belgium up.
Yeah.
And then obviously again, I think the weekend after that would be Derby weekend, where I think that's when the first European World Cup is. So I think it's Dendermonde, but don't hold me just because again I haven't. It's been so weird trying to balance planning a cross season and planning or like finalizing my gravel season. So like bit blurry. There is a calendar somewhere, but I've not been looking at it too much at the moment. And I think it's Dendermonde World Cup, Rudevorde on the Saturday, Dendermonde World Cup, and then I think it's Koppenberg a couple of days later. So I think I'd probably end up doing that block as well, to be honest.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, maybe there's an outside chance of Euros, which is I've heard is Tabor.
So Euros
Or is Worlds in Tabor? Have I forgot?
Worlds in Tabor. I think Euros might be France, but again, don't hold me to it.
Yeah, somewhere in Brittany, I want to say.
Yes, that does ring a bell, in all fairness.
Yeah, I get them all mixed up. It's all one big melting pot of.
It's so easy to do. There's just races here, races there, races there. It's like, I can't remember where everything is.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, especially if you've got a road season, a gravel season, a cross season, like seasons never end.
Yes.
When are you getting rest for a start? Like,
So I think for me this year, so my rest period ended up in March, which is why, as I said, it took me a while to build into my road season because normally everyone hits March and they've had their big winter build and they're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And I'm there like, it's rest time now.
yeah.
So I feel like chances are this year, particularly obviously because one of my always things I'm always like when someone wins national champs, I'm like, oh, I just want to see the jersey. So you want them to race. And I'm like, I now can't be the person with a national jersey who doesn't race and hides the jersey. So I think not like an excessive amount, but definitely will be planning on factoring more gravel races into my calendar next year, which means that I probably will end my season in February. Obviously, again, world champs for cross is February. So if I get selected for that, that'll probably be my last race of the season. If not, I might even end it a little bit earlier in January to then have that time off the bike to reset before adding a build phase before I get into my road season and my gravel season.
Yeah. Well, in a roundabout way, I really hope that you end your season in February and not January.
Yes.
Um,
Me too, to be quite honest.
yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how things go.
Yeah.
Super excited to follow your progress this year. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the changes that have come because of gravel, like, does that translate to cross? And
Yeah.
will you be similarly a lot higher up in the cross season? It'd be really nice to see, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely exciting times.
that's for sure.
But yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Well, there you go. It's always great to chat to Zan. As I said, she's an amazing person, and I have all the time in the world for her. I can't wait to see how she gets on in the cyclocross season and watching that on GCN. Yeah, just thank you so much for listening, as always.